push a rich man's news. You push a rich man's views. Oh, you hate the working stiff and his nasty union dues. Company man, you paid your dues, now you think you're part of the plan? Yeah, company man, you're on your own cause these colors went and done ran. Company man, you're living high, but guess what? Your income's low. Company man, you got no power, they just made you think so. Be a king if your crown weren't missing.
Wow. So in less than 24 hours, the first episode on YouTube has already reached about 10 viewers. That's great. I want to thank all of you for listening in, and I hope it wasn't a tremendous waste of your time. I'm hoping that the topic covered, which was the Great Resignation, may have incited you to or inspired you to question some things in your life and about your participation in the capitalist system, or at the very least that it was entertaining. And I hope you come back for more. So welcome back. For those of you who tuned in to episode 1, for those new to the podcast, this is the proletariat. I am a working class American of the brown skin variety, and that's really about it. I've gone ahead and started setting up all the socials. So let's see here. You can reach me at Twitter. My Twitter name is at proletariat, and that's with 2 A's. Okay. You could also listen to the podcast at anchor.fm, and it's the proletariat with 2 A's and an exclamation point replacing the I, just like in the title card. Okay. You could also listen to the podcast on Spotify, the proletariat. And you may also search there under my surname, Dean Thaddeus Towers III. Okay. And then there's also the YouTube channel, The Proletariat, and Patreon as well, The Proletariat. So I haven't set up all those links yet on those various sites. So tune in, and I'll let you know once they're up. So yeah, once again, it was a great response for, like I said, less than 24 hours. I didn't plan on recording today, but I had a lull after the lunch rush here, working Uber Eats. I had about 2 good hours, which did result in, decent 30-something bucks. And after getting home, instead of just kind of wallowing here in my pity, I decided to check on things, and I just wanted to thank everyone who tuned in once again to the first episode. Now, I do realize that I was very redundant in my execution regarding the topic of the Great Resignation, and now sort of for a reason. Once again, the media is really trying to spin things, basically placing the onus on the AKA work shortage or worker shortage on the working class, just straight out being lazy, not wanting to work. They, excuse me, they got a taste of that sweet, sweet government unemployment cash that just improved the quality of their lives so much. I think stock in avocado toast went up. Well, anyway, uh, that's going to be sort of the format for this podcast. I will from time to time include more documentary style educational um, series of sorts, like I did with the People Class podcast, in which most of the topics that I presented were more in a, like I said, educational fashion, more so than my personal opinions on things. So, one of the things that have been floating around in my mind, labor unions, labor unions, and labor organizations, right? You have different brotherhoods and fraternities. I was part of the Teamsters several times um, due to the multiple merchandising jobs I've had, right? I was not very active. Aside from, your introductory brochure, because you're mandated to go to a chapter building somewhere and sign up, register. Other than that pamphlet, I never heard much from my union reps about anything. They just seemed to take their union dues. I understood that if, excuse my French, if shit hit the fan between me and my employer, that any arbitration was to go through the union first, right? They were supposed to represent you as a member. One of the benefits. But once again, I wasn't very active. There was only one time in which I even considered like talking to anyone in my local chapter of the Teamsters. And that was my experience in working for the Dr. Pepper Snapple group. That was once again in 2013. That was my rude awakening into just how the culture of food and beverage merchandising had changed in just less than a decade. And it was actually got fired from that job. Right. This is, and this is the reason why. So, working the day after the 4th of July, which is the busiest day for soda sales in America. The 5th of July, because I guess some drivers are still observing the holiday, there's no orders, there's no freight, there's no soda going to any of these stores. Being the busiest selling day for soda in the country, shelves are pretty empty. Okay, so there are literally stock rooms that I was walking into and empty pallets. There was a certain format in which they wanted to set up the displays, even on the shelf. So you try to do that to the best of your abilities with what you had. And on the 5th of July, most of those beverages in the stock rooms and your Walmarts and what have you, good luck. Pretty empty. And a delivery is not going to show up until the 6th. That's just how that works. I don't know if things have changed since then, but that was my experience. So the 6th of July, I'm working my shift and I'm basically blasting through these stores, right? Spending typically maybe 30 to 45 minutes in each store because that's really all I had to work with. So I get to my last store, go in, check in with receiving, and the receiver's upset that, hey, there's no delivery coming in until tomorrow. I know, right? I know. So I do what I can, face up my shelves. I don't have anything for any displays. It takes about half an hour, and I go and sit in the car. Contact my manager, and I let them know, hey, nothing going on. Get no answer back. So I wait around until my 8 hours. And once 8 hours hit, no word from the territory manager, I decide to go home. Okay. So my next day, my shift, that Sunday, I go in and I'm getting written up. Why? Because I cut my shift short. Because I clocked out before 12 hours. And I should have made more of an effort to, I guess, go meet up with somebody else on that route to help them out, right? Okay, whatever. So it's basically, you get the slip, and you're told you could contact your union rep. You know what? Wasn't even worth it for me at that point. Yeah, so that was my experience with labor union. Like I said, not much at all. But in 2020, getting involved in the protests and the People Class podcast, which was used to reach out to others and mutual aid funds, and just trying to network grassroots labor unions and get them talking. Try to get them talking, so that some of those wildfires could actually spread, not just be put out through local law enforcement as they often were. So it's pretty interesting. In a very short amount of time, I did get to network with a couple of different groups. Many of them dissolved within days to a week of forming. So there's a lot of people I didn't even get to talk to before they had the chance to kind of represent themselves on the podcast. I did get to work with one group based out of St. Louis. They're called the Who Are We movement. And they had a lot going on up there. A lot of them were with the grocers union, and they were heavily involved and active in a lot of the protests going out there, from the Black Lives Matter to the fight for 15, right? And obviously boosting essential worker benefits. So that was a pretty cool experience. I unfortunately had to kind of, participate in that remotely from afar. I never did get a chance to actually go and meet up with the group face to face, but through them, I did get to kind of enter that world, right? Through Who Are We movement, I did get to sit into Zoom conference calls with Chris Smalls. Right, and if anyone remembers who that guy is, he's basically the the gentleman who led the Amazon strikes back in the height of the pandemic, and he grew to rapid notoriety, and he kind of fell off. I'm not saying he's not active. He has become very active, but I'm sure he's doing, excuse me, what he has to do in order to avoid like the fate of, say, someone like a Martin Luther King, right? But he is, from what I understand, traveling the world, networking with several different labor unions and organizations, and we'll see where that goes. I haven't really heard much about that in some months now. If you have, definitely comment in the comment sections on wherever you can stream this podcast. So aside from that, I ended up getting in contact with the IWW. A lot of organizations just didn't respond back, or if they did, there was very little follow up, right? So I was trying to get information on, the 101s of labor organization. Why can't I say that right now? Labor organization. Because believe it or not, in the U.S., there's not very much education on that or cooperatives. That sort of education is taboo in this hyper-capitalist system, and that's the last thing they want workers doing, right? So I did do a deep dive into sort of, the 101s, tactics, and things like that. And I got some good hits through YouTube, for instance. There was the Korean protests and the farmers' protests in India, for instance, in which you got to see how they moved, right, in action when they were actually out in the streets. And I can't imagine how many months and months of meeting and organization that took, right, in order for those campaigns to be successful. Let's look at Arab Springs, right, over in Egypt. Probably one of the most successful modern labor movements in history, right? But yeah, it was very difficult actually getting in contact with a lot of these organizations, even at seemingly the height of working class frustration. They wanted to take your money for union dues, but there wasn't much. I joined the local DSA chapter here in San Antonio with the risk of doxing myself. And there was just nothing for months. A couple of introductory texts. Hey, thanks for joining. I'm so and so. You can reach me here. Other than that, it was several months of radio silence. Even going into their Slack forums and things like that, asking questions and reaching out, and nothing, just nothing. And after about 6 months of this, then all of a sudden, I decide, hey, I'm gonna stop paying for this because I'm trying to support working class warriors here, and you guys just take my money and you're not doing anything. So once I reached out to start canceling my memberships, then suddenly I was inundated with, and still inundated with, even though I'm no longer involved with any of those chapters, invitations to Zoom meetings, right? Just endless Zoom meetings and bureaucracy that honestly never seem to go anywhere, right? And every time I joined those forums, those live Zoom meetings, the chat rooms and whatnot, and pose questions as to what do we do about taking direct action, right? Taking to the streets, polling, trying to orchestrate general strikes, things like that. No response. Just all of those inquiries were just completely ignored. I recall being even sort of shamed by someone in one of these forums. Call it Captain America or something like that. It's like, okay, I thought that's what we were here for, organizing the labor force here in America so that, we can improve our quality of lives. right? And in my experience, that just hadn't seemed to be the case. So aside from the DSA, the only other labor organization that I had actually, there are two that I had a little more prolonged contact with. That was the IWW. But once I started inquiring more about, once again, the one-on-ones and joining, was met with very vague answers and non-answers, and then eventually just faded into radio silence as well. The other one was, I think, Ewok, and if I recall, that's some sort of electrical union. And I got invited and sat through quite a bit of video conferences with them, but there just was no tangible action, right? It was, I don't, yeah, it was a lot of nothing in my experience. And I'm not saying any of this to say bash any of these organizations, but it seemed like at the height of, say, like the DSA's membership, between 2020 and 2021, I think September 2020 and April 2021, the DSA had a record, hit record numbers in membership. I mean, up into the like 900,000s, right? They had never seen an increase so big. And, I covered some of the history of that in the People Class podcast. That was the biggest boom they've ever had at one time. And yeah, it just, a lot of those led to dead ends. A lot of these organizations wanted to collect my union dues, but there was little to zilch of any actual organizing actions or planning, right? A lot of, cool bureaucracy and theorizing, but it wasn't what we needed, right? That's not what we needed. Um, I mean, the nurses union had so much power during the height of the pandemic. And I know a lot of them were sort of stuck in this between a moral rock and a hard place because, yeah, they wanted to definitely fight for better wages, better benefits. But at the same time, a lot of those nurses actually do care about human beings, and they couldn't not do their job, right? So my heart goes out to them. I feel that. And that was definitely a point that the powers that be was able to leverage against them, right? I remember speaking to some of these nurses through some of these grassroots groups. And, some were sort of appalled at the idea of going on strike, when the pandemic was just taking so many lives, right? They felt an obligation, a duty to the oath that they took as doctors, nurses, surgeons, et cetera, medical professionals. The tides have changed. So now we have we have protection against the virus. The vaccines seem to be working as far as I can tell. Worldwide, they seem to be sort of staving off numbers. Yeah, with the new variants, people will be claimed by those. However, once again, in my reality, we never shut down here. Overall, in the U.S., especially here in Texas, especially in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you, Governor. for the amount of people that have continued to socialize and shop and eat out and things, it's amazing that the pandemic hasn't claimed more here in San Antonio, right? It was legit scary here for a while. I remember being a supervisor at the Home Depot, and there's so many, not only my subordinates, but just so many other associates in the store who felt compelled to come to me and sort of grieve their grievances, right? The shock and the reality that the corporations didn't care about their lives, that played a heavy toll on people. So yeah, I've seen people go into straight panic attacks, at the height of this thing. But we still have to go out there and risk our lives, as if we were soldiers deployed in war. I'm sure many of you, especially in the left media sphere, can recall the calls, especially from the conservative pundits, for grandma and grandpa to get back out there to save the economy, right? Because the virus was not affecting so much of the youth and the adolescents. There's some morbid stuff right there. That is just absolutely nutrageous. But once again, the tides have changed. The vaccines have seemed to help tremendously, in my personal opinion. Regardless on what you think about it, I was personally skeptical because of listening to many epidemiologists out there, sharing their viewpoints and opinions on various podcasts and what have you. They were claiming that it would traditionally or theoretically take about 5 years, 2 to 5 years, to create an effective vaccine for this virus, right? Many were just saying, hey, you know what? It looks like the new normal is we're just going to live with coronavirus. That remains to be seen. Still highly possible. We'll see. But it seemed to help. It seemed to help, in my opinion. I personally was able to move past my skepticisms and cynicism about how quickly the vaccines were developed. But while I do understand that corporations stand to profit a lot, and they have, from the development of these vaccines, as well as I understand how scary it is that Trump did pass the right to try laws, meaning that Big Pharma can test products on you now. They can, which you pay for as a consumer, and that's how they'll figure out what the side effects are, right? If you contracted some sort of chronic condition, or even worse, died from it, too bad, so sad, right to try, right? So I had many concerns, as many Americans do, about these vaccines, but I decided to go ahead and take it, right? And once again, this is sort of my conditioning from being in the military. Flu shots were mandatory. Before the military, I never took a flu shot. To be honest with you, I was never affected by them, by the flu in particular. But you kind of got used to having to do what you had to do. And my cost-benefit analysis of the situation was just go ahead. Worst comes to worst, I don't know, I get the coronavirus, right? I don't fear death, so and I don't say that like with any pride or anything. I don't fear death like that, so the worst is I can die. Great, I don't have to participate in this capitalist BS anymore. Or I can have some sort of immunity against the virus, right? I risked it. So I don't think the government is tracking me other than through my smartphone that I carry around everywhere. And since I am doing food delivery, my location is on at all times. So yeah, that's not really much of a concern here. And I believe you could go out on YouTube now, and scientists are actually debunking the theory of chips being placed into the vaccines. It seems pretty ridiculous to me anyway. Um, so yes, getting back on topic here. Yeah, so the tides have changed. With the vaccine, once again, we have better protection. At this time, and I do know, and maybe I'll try to bring her on at one point. One of my close friends from high school, her name is Maggie, and she's a nurse, and I've basically been in communication with her the whole time throughout this pandemic, and I've got to in real time get her perspective, her fears, her anxieties, her concerns, her hopes. And her nurses union is currently on strike right now in California. And so I have checked in with her from time to time to see how that's going, but she did say that she would like to join us at one point, and I think it's a great time as any. I'm not introducing her for this episode, but I'll go ahead and coordinate that for you. And any of you out there who would like to somehow support them, please tune in, and we'll figure out the logistics with that. So yeah, I think I'll go ahead and get that set up. So yeah, the nurses could actually leverage their power right now, right? And that's a good thing, because that means we can possibly bring faster shifts in healthcare reform, right? So that we can actually afford it. Better yet, maybe it's universal healthcare, right? Every other developed nation in the world pretty much has it in some shape or form. The fact is, if you're an American citizen, if you drove down to Mexico right now, you can still get better healthcare than you can here in the States. Period, full stop, right? So let's do what we can to support our nurses, right? If you have no idea who they are in your neighborhood, hop on Google. Just do a quick search for local nurses union chapters or whatever, and see how you can help support that. I will take efforts to once again try to find a way to easily consolidate this information for you all, so that you can participate more efficiently. In my time in doing the People's Class podcast, for instance, I spent so much time searching for local chapters, and yeah, at that point I was ended up on like page 3 of the Google search page, and it's not 2005 anymore. That pretty much means you're not going to find what you're looking for. So I'll do my best to try to consolidate this information as I continue to network and make these connections. Okay. So yeah, one of the facts that I highlighted at several points in the first episode is the fact that so many people have already lost so much already anyway. Either you're getting lower wages, you lost your pension, your employer is no longer offering healthcare benefits, what have you. If you're unfortunately worse off, maybe you've lost your apartment, you're couch surfing right now. Maybe you're sleeping in your car. I have been there. My heart goes out to you. Uh, I admire the stoic reserve of that community, those living on the street and in the cars. Just a quick tangent on that. A documentary was released a year and a half ago. I want to say it was through Vice, but it was covering the Skid Row over in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, in California. And they interviewed a lot of people living out of their vans and things. And it was just funny. And the very American spirit, just nobody wanted to show vulnerability in that position. And I just thought that was pretty interesting. Not a tear. I understand. I mean, just nobody wants to look weak here, but you got to remember we're human beings. It's okay to show those emotions. That stuff matters. It's very traumatic to people. I can't tell you how it feels to have to live in your vehicle, sleeping with one eye open because you don't know if just somebody's cruel and gonna mess with you, or maybe you've been loitering too long in a parking lot and you're afraid of getting a ticket that you can't afford to pay, or getting towed while you're off at work. Just, yeah, very traumatic, very stressful. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to people. That song "Lean on Me," yeah, great advice to live by. So people have lost so much already. Once again, there's not much that many working class Americans have to lose anymore. And we see that with the current phenomenon with the Great Resignation, that people are deciding to go their own way. That's great. So we're going to see a renaissance, a boom in entrepreneurship, which is great because it's just going to breed more innovative products and services for better prices. What I hope to see, and this is a very far cry, but one of the things that I do hope to see is the development of local co-ops, right? You won't be able to get a business loan anyway for something like that. But I think if we learn to stop fearing our neighbor and the American spirit, let's start. Remember that MAGA movement? Well, F that movement, I will say that. But Make America Great Again, there are some highlights in that, right? I'm just going to go back to the 90s, right? I do remember a strong community where I grew up on my block. My grandma and auntie living right across the street from one another, but we knew the neighbors. We knew the neighbors three houses down. All the kids played with each other, and all of the parents kept an eye out on the kids and held all the children accountable, right? Because they wanted to keep everybody safe. We had that. I had that in the 90s growing up, right? That was a thing. Now, and I recall any of you who watch stand-up comedy, Sebastian Maniscalco, I believe it is, and I want to say it's his first Netflix special. He talks about he has the company sketch, right, where he's talking about how we used to enjoy having company, right? His mom used to put out the Entenmann's cake that was just for company, and you did not touch that because it was for when company came over. Your cousin or your uncle or whoever just happened to be in the neighborhood and ring your doorbell, and you were excited for that. You went and made dinner, put on some coffee, had your dessert, had a good time. Now your doorbell rings and people are turning off the lights and the TV and hiding behind the couch. Don't make a sound, don't move. Who the hell is that? Did anybody call anybody? Did anybody order anything? That's how we are now. We're so afraid of one another. And once again, something that I explained in the People Class podcast, a tactic used by the powers that be to keep us from uniting. This was a tactic that was first developed and used back in 1864, right? Once the slaves were freed, and remember, there were a lot of other nationalities over here as well. It wasn't just blacks and whites. You had your Scottish, you had German, Chinese, etc. There. And by the way, if you ever wanted to just YouTube what the Six Flags stand for Six Flags Magic Mountain, you all know that theme park. Just do that. Once you do, go ahead and comment on wherever you can stream this podcast and let me know what you found out, right? And this is going to highlight exactly the point I'm bringing up now. There are many other ethnicities here. And them all being on the poverty level, they started talking to one another. They started talking to one another. They started to basically solidify and unionize, and this scared the rich. This scared the holy bejesus out of the rich, and they started the campaigns. The black people want revenge because what we did to them. Watch your backs. And all the finger pointing started then, right? And obviously we know now. Just look at Trump's campaign. His sentiment about the Mexicans and the Middle Eastern communities and things, those go back for generations. He isn't the first to say inflammatory statements like that about non-Americans, right? They don't like others in this country. And imagine being a newly immigrated person here in the US, and you move to the neighborhood that you can afford. It may happen to be AKA the hood or the ghetto. And like most of the mass media that most people watch and listen to, all you hear is bad things about certain ethnicities, minorities, blacks or Mexicans or whatever. So now this new person to the US, starts to develop these fears for those people too. And this is how the racism perpetuates. It's a cycle that keeps going. They want to take your guns and all, they just throw stuff at the wall and sees what sticks. So, we need to start kind of coming together more. We all need the same stuff. We need healthcare. We need living wages. We need affordable housing. We need decent infrastructure. We need clean energy in some way, shape, or form. We need access to low cost or free access to the internet because it's just a common good now. All that stuff, right? We all need that stuff. There's no point in competing for it anymore. They've mined all of the bitcoins at this point. It is basically like getting in the final years of that, right? And I just use that as an analogy. There's a lot of people out there fighting for scraps. I mean, what's left over after the chicken feed in the morning? So we need to stop doing that. We just really need to stop doing that. So I did migrate away from the left Twitter space and left media space. Once again, a lot of that is just echo chambers of whatever was trending on the RSS news feeds or Twitter of the day. And there was not very much information other than personal opinions about who said what being shared. That just doesn't fly for me. It's exactly the reason why once again, the left is having a hard time with uniting and actually taking any action on a cohesive scale, right? God's sakes, Jimmy Dore started doing such a great job in representing unions and such, but he's so caught up on his personal beefs with people, and it's like, man, just these opinions don't matter. They're a flash in the pan, and just they don't affect your life in any way, shape, or form. Let's just get back on topic to supporting unions and networking these unions on a national scale, in some way, somehow. I have no idea how we're ever going to make that happen here in the US, but right now seems to be a very, very great time, great season to start planting those seeds once again for that grassroots movement of communities coming together, co-oping with each other, trying to build some sort of financial treasury of some sort so that you can start supporting the members. And then you start contracting out, work to just union members who can be anybody who's a working class citizen, who doesn't make 100,000 K or more a year, right? So just if you're a working, able-bodied working American, yeah, like that's sort of the ultimate goal, right? That's like in the upper echelon there, universal benefits for everyone. That's what that turns into. That turns into a stable economy, in which the means of production are not consolidated to monopolies. That will keep the innovation going, right? Because eventually things will get stale and new technologies will have to be created for efficiencies. Ultimately, as human beings, that's what we're striving for. How do we make this experience here on this earth more comfortable? Because we can't do anything about it anyway, right? Yeah, it makes no sense that for, oh my God, at least 100 years, or definitely centuries for some of us, depending on what your skin color is, has been whittled down to just being a labor resource, right? That's not a life. That's not living. If you want to know how cattle feel, if they can indeed feel this way, that's how it feels right now. How you feel working your 9 to 5, having to rush with somebody on somebody else's schedule, right? That's not a life. That's not a life at all. So, how do we get there? Once again, the grassroots. It has to start from the bottom. And unfortunately, we have some opportunists out there who take advantage of that momentum. People such as like AOC, for instance, and the whole squad. I know people are very divided on that group, but a lot of them just use that as an opportunity to escape the trap, right? And through their actions, we clearly see they're just living high on the hog now. They're accepting all those corporate lobby bribes, and they're fine. They don't have to worry about the rat race anymore, and it shows. But it doesn't mean you give up the fight, right? It sucks that when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, that was sort of the end of that, right? Like, no, keep going. We need to get rid of this whole like English hierarchy of power, right? I mean, that's the benefit of solidarity and unionizing and coming together in community, is so that you can share the ideas of several people that can create a plan better than any one man that you chose to place as leader can do on his own accord, right? Like, just keep the momentum going. Yeah, they're going to come with guns. That's the way they do it here, right? That's the way they do it. The ultimate deterrent is the fear of death, right? So yeah, it's going to happen. People don't want to die. I get that, right? I joined the military. I didn't necessarily want to be over out in Iraq and Afghanistan. I get it. But we need to adopt better practices, right? Overall. But I'm going to drop the cynicism that I had that sort of led me to even just go ahead and end that whole podcasting campaign anyway, that networking campaign. Um, because once again, we're seeing a hopeful shift right now in the working class as a whole, right? We don't seem to be so divided over these issues. And it's not, if you're caught up in the left Twitter bubble, whatever you think, however that's shaping your reality, that's not the reality, right? So if you're stuck in that left Twitter bubble right now, you're probably, yeah, pretty jaded, pretty cynical too. Um, but I say you can drop that now, right? You drop that now. It take a break. Take a break from that for a little bit and actually kind of take a look at what's going on. Check your local media, news media, check world news, and you'll see. Now, we haven't organized yet, right? It's not a big cohesive strategy, but the actions of the working class overall as a population, yeah, it's shifting some things, right? Um, a point that I did mention in last episode was the fact that there are some employers out there who are desperate enough to offer healthcare benefits or part-time positions. Right? That's nuts. Between 2000 and 2020, like I never thought I'd see anything like that, right? It just it's a crazy notion here in the U.S. and that's very sad. But you are seeing also a gradual increase in wages, right? Um, some guys are doubling down, and you are seeing a increase in lower wages being offered as well. But I think more and more people are sort of flocking away from a lot of these bigger corporations, these hamster wheel employers. I'll call them. I won't call them big box. I'll call them hamster wheel employers. Not really providing much value or service, just kind of collecting. So yeah, just things are changing. Things are changing. It's good. It's actually refreshing. I hope that the Zoomer generation keeps the same fervor that the millennials had at the height of the war, right? Once they sort of got disenfranchised. Um, when we thought that the Gen Xers gave up, right? Now, being in this position, almost 40 years old now, you can see that the boomers and Gen Xers did not necessarily give up. They were played so well that they just had to survive, right? And although they were a little better off, well, actually, they were a lot better off than we are now, right? Like in 2021, if you're of working age, um, they're just focused on surviving, right? Just like we are right now. Once again, there's a lot of people who have amazing talents and skills who would make great product and service providers out there, right? To uh, add to this economy and to our communities. But they're stifled, right? They're stifled by uh, crazy laws that corporations basically write for themselves and pays the government to implement, right? So just most of that notion of this being the land of opportunity and you can be an immigrant that moves in and make a living off of starting your restaurant or what have you, your car wash, your cleaners, you name it. That's That's no longer a reality here, and so many of you see it. And a lot of the Zoomers, they're actually pretty jaded already, which is great, right? Because most of them are just barely reaching adolescence. They're early to mid 20s, and it is great to see them taking the actions that many of us failed to take because we were just so focused on surviving, right? But they have it way tougher. So yeah, they're crying out now. They're crying out, and it's great. So let's support all of these efforts to improve the quality of lives for us as working class Americans here in the U.S. Right? So where I'm kind of I'm gonna leave off with this here, and it's sort of I'm posing you this question: how has your experience been working with some of these mutual aid organizations? Being in a labor union, are you active? Do you even know you're in one? Um, or being a member or reaching out to some of the labor organizations such as the DSA, the IWW, et cetera, et cetera. Have you found a lot of radio silence? Have you had my experience where they were just collecting dues, but there wasn't much happening, and you just were chomping at the bit to start organizing or learning or teaching tactics for organizing? Um, have you been in one for a while and you notice that activity has dropped off? Could be due to the coronavirus. If so, I would like to know. But once again, I would like to once again reach out and network and work with you all and try to let's organize on a more massive scale here. If you're interested, hit me up once again. I'd leave comments in the comment section wherever you can stream this podcast. You can also find me on Twitter. Twitter name or Twitter handle being @proletariat, and I believe that's with the exclamation point. Yes, so that's proletariat with 2 capital A's and an exclamation point. You can stream this podcast once again on Anchor, on Spotify, on Patreon, which I'm actually still setting up. So just keep an eye out for when that's ready and available. And I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and release the People Class podcast sessions on Patreon as well. If any of you are interested in like getting some of those lessons or some of those quad sessions, and any of those who did enjoy the quad, yes, Brian will be back. Mr. Brian Newton of Rick and Morty fame. He will be back to share his views and opinions on some topics. We're trying to coordinate that right now. So yeah, if you're interested in sort of the more archival project, let me know, and I'll see what I can do there. Shouldn't be too difficult. So once again, the power is in your hands. I say take it back. I would love to network with a lot of you out here. At the risk of doxing myself, I am located in San Antonio, Texas. So if you're here, definitely get in touch. I will go ahead and repurpose my Discord, so you can reach me through there. And as far as reaching me through email, if you have any inquiries there, go ahead and send those to thepeopleclass@gmail.com. That email address is actually still functional. So I'm going to go ahead and just use that moving forward for the proletariat. So once again, this is Dean Thaddeus Towers III, and I am the proletariat, wishing you peace, love, and solidarity. Have a good week out there.
That's right. Company man. Kissing the ass of the rich. While you living on 40 grand a year? What? That's all you got? Time to take back what's yours, company man. Time to just be a man. Or shit, even half a man. Quit swiping your ID over that scanner. Jump on in, come on. Let's get a plan, yo. Nighty night, company man.